Hello and welcome to what's probably the weirdest speedrun submission so far. I am FM225 and this is my submission for Touhou 16, Hidden Star in 4 Seasons. Now, the Touhou project games, typically you don't see the mainline shoot-em-up Touhou games at speedrun marathons because there's really not that much you can do to make them go faster. Especially because the stages, the games are set up in such a way that the stages always take a similar amount of time on every playthrough. And for boss battles, to make those go by faster, it basically involves optimizing the amount of time you spend shooting and not dodging. Now, Hidden Star in 4 Seasons is a bit different. Actually, before I go on, I should say I'm actually not running the main game. I'm running the extra stage, which is an additional stage that you unlock in every game after beating the main game. And the reason for that is, in this game in particular, it has a mechanic where in addition to selecting a character, you also select a sub-weapon. There are 4 characters and 4 sub-weapons. But for the extra stage, you are required to use a new 5th sub-weapon. And this sub-weapon, it actually combos really well with the character I'm going to be using, which is Reimu Hakure. And I'll explain when the stage starts. I'm actually going to be running a replay for this submission video, so it's more of a demonstration. When I play live at the marathon, if I'm accepted, I'm definitely going to be playing live, and I will probably want a co-commentator because talking while playing this is more difficult than it looks. So this is the replay. I completed the stage in 7 minutes and 48 seconds, and assuming the game does not lag while I'm recording this, because I have had to mess around with it a little bit to not get it to lag while recording is happening. So I'll be working on that before the marathon starts. So I'm just gonna start the replay, and then I will explain game mechanics as we go. So 3, 2, 1, and here we go. A little late on the start, but that's fine. So, the sub-weapon that I was talking about, when you shoot enemies in this game, they drop energy pickups, and that charges your sub-weapon. So I've already reached level 1 with the sub-weapon. That is the shot that is shooting behind me. Your sub-weapon shoots behind you in this stage, and that's going to be important because there are a lot of sections in this stage where enemies are going to be coming up behind you. And the reason that combos with Reimu really well is she's got a homing shot. So if you're close enough to an enemy, you'll not only be hitting them with the sub-weapon, the homing shot will hit them as well. So that's the main part of what allows us to pile on a lot of damage, because it's very powerful to be able to hit the enemies with every shot you've got. And another thing you can do with the sub-weapon is called a release. Releasing costs 1 of your sub-weapon levels, but it will send an orb down behind you that does a lot of damage. And I'm going to use that to obliterate the mini-boss very quickly, which is coming up after a couple more waves. Personally, if you ask me, I think this stage is not really well designed because it's just a lot of filler enemies and some really uncreative patterns. So you only need to destroy 1 of these mini-bosses for it to count, and we are going to do that by climbing onto this lady's face and releasing onto her head. And I probably could have worded that a lot better, but you can see me releasing right there. It did so much damage that it just got rid of that phase in 5 seconds. There's 3 phases to the mini-boss. Here's phase number 2. I clear it in exactly the same way. 6 seconds on that one. And for this last phase, I'm going to use bombs. Bombs are a special attack that you can use. You have a limited number of them, but you can earn more as the stage progresses. And that got rid of her in 10 seconds. So, one of the interesting things about this extra stage is that it doesn't, typically in Touhou games, after the mini-boss, they spawn filler enemies in order to make sure that the stage takes the same amount of time, because it's in sync with the very epic soundtrack. So, in order to keep in tune with the music, filler enemies are spawned to take up additional time. That doesn't happen in this stage. Those weren't filler enemies. So, it's interesting that that decision was made. This extra stage honestly feels a little bit rushed, and there's going to be reasons for that later, but if it allows me to make a speed run, then that's fine. I'm just using a bomb here because that's very difficult to dodge. Dodging attacks from behind you is way more difficult than dodging them from above. And I'm going to release into these lasers. What that does is that whenever you release, the little orb actually erases bullets, and for every bullet erased, it increases the value of the blue point items, which add to your score. Since in this game you get extra lives for scoring higher, then you actually want to release it quite a lot in order to build up that point item value. And I'm going to be getting a lot of extra lives, because for some reason this extra stage gives so many lives. Anyways, this extra stage is also very short, because after this wave right here, we are going to be at the boss already. And like with the mini-boss, releasing into her is how we're going to do a lot of damage for the first phase. This boss fight, like most Touhou project boss fights, this is divided into two kinds of phases. This is called a non-spelled, because it's not a named pattern. Named patterns are called spell cards, and during spell cards, for extra stage bosses, you can't damage them with releases or bombs during spell cards. So you have to stick to... That was a very accidental death. Like, I can afford to take a couple of hits. So what I'm doing is, you can see that I am positioning myself inside the enemy's hurt box, but outside of the hitbox, which means I'm hitting them with all of my shots. However, I am not taking a hit. I'm very close to taking a hit when I do this. In fact, during this pattern in particular, you can see that she's moving up and down. That makes it very dangerous to try this strategy, because she could crash into you and cost you a life. Dying would waste time, so I probably don't want to do that. But yes, with that technique, that technique is how we pile on a lot of damage onto this boss. Like, the other characters could potentially do this, but they wouldn't have the homing shots, and not many of their other shots would be able to hit the boss at the same time. So it's very good to be doing this with Reimu. You can, like, clean up in a very short amount of time. You have to be careful not to release. You can't really spam releases or bombs, because she's invincible during releases or bombs during a spell card, so you want to... Yeah, you can still release if you want to use that to erase bullets and save yourself from a death, but you definitely don't want to bomb, because that would take up a lot of your time. So, for this pattern, like, it would be nice if I could just stay on top of her for the duration of it, but with this many bullets, you can't really do that. And every time she finishes a pattern, well, not this one in particular, she doesn't move up here, but for other patterns, you kind of want to get out of the way before she moves up and crashes into you. Alright, so this pattern, I stay above her for the beginning part of it, but when these red balls come out, I basically want to just swing around the screen like a wheel. And this spell card is very easy for Reimu, because she's still doing damage with the homing shots, even when she's not able to shoot at the boss. So yes, that was very easy. And this next pattern, what is next after this? I can't even remember the order of these, because they go by so quickly. Ah yes, this is the one that I haven't been able to do without using a release or a bomb. I very often take a hit here, because this is a lot more difficult than it seems. It's definitely hard to spot all of these bullets when they start getting close. Oopsie. But that's fine, because even if you do take a hit, you can still use the invincibility frames to do some extra damage. So after this pattern, yeah, I've taken another hit, unfortunately. But I've just picked up the final extra life for the stage, so that's good. So this is the only pattern that I'm going to do quote-unquote normally. I'm not going to go above her for this. Like, these lasers, they do fire into, like, absolutely nothing if you are above the boss, because for some reason, those lasers are always in a fixed position, but the way they fire is based on your position in relation to the boss instead of relation to themselves. It's so weird. So yes, all of these non-spells are basically handled the same way, just release and then use a bomb. Oh, and this pattern is fun. All I do is just get into position and then move left or right exclusively. That's all I'm gonna do. Maybe release in order to clean out some of the bullets and get them out of the way. But yes, you can see that went by very, very quickly. And this pattern is just fun. Okay, so in every extra stage, the boss has a phase where you have to survive. You can't shoot at the boss during a survival phase. But for some reason, if you release or bomb, then the game forgets to make the boss invulnerable again. So you can actually just shoot at her normally. That would have normally taken a lot more time. You saw the timer. That saved me about like 70 seconds or something. It's crazy. So this is the final phase of the battle, and for this one you basically just have to avoid getting hit while optimizing the amount of damage you do as much as possible. Get above her when she's at the bottom of the screen, and then stay aligned with her when she's at the top of the screen. She's always moving in a circle like that. Yeah, unfortunately I took a hit. I would have loved to do this without taking any hits, but I guess sometimes I can afford to take like 4 more hits. It's totally okay. Alright, so, and that's the end! It seems that the game has lagged just a little bit. The timer says it's 10 seconds higher than what it should be, but that's okay. Like, I've more than demonstrated what I was going for here. So that's Touhou 16's extra stage, and assuming there aren't any more, like, complications, I hope there won't be, but I will work on ironing out the complications, and hope to see you at the marathon. Later, everybody.